now the latest around the wide world of tropics. Tropical Weather Bulletin for August 31st. Well, we've made it to the end of the month and we have two systems active. Tropical Storm Kate, which is basically a naked circulation hanging there in the Atlantic, and Ida, which continues to bring catastrophic rainfall across portions of the south as a tropical depression. Much weaker than it was after it made its Category 4 landfall yesterday. It's day 92 of the Atlantic hurricane season. You can see Ida there. It's going to be pushing north and then east soon enough. Kate, barely a tropical storm. Invest 90L with a 90% chance of formation, could become a significant hurricane. And then, of course, another area of interest we're watching there in the Caribbean, 20% at this time. It's day 108 of Eastern Pacific hurricane season, and for the first time in quite some time, there is nothing and nothing expected in the next 5 days here. So, might as well get used to the reality that the season's peak is pretty much over now. In the Western Pacific, it's the same story. There is no storms active and unexpected in the next 5 days. Conditions are expected to remain unfavorable for anything to develop here. Season's already been quite inactive in terms of the typhoon and major count as it is. And in the North Indian Ocean, same story yet again. No storms are active, which means that the only activity that we have worldwide at the moment is in the Atlantic. Of course, the North Indian Ocean is not expected to see any more activity for a few more weeks at least. So with that, here's the North Atlantic satellite imagery. You can see Ida continuing to weaken as it heads northwards. K you really can't see because literally it's just a skeletal band. All convection pretty much got blasted away by the wind shear we're seeing, and then of course Julian turned extratropical after being named for only 12 hours. In the Eastern Pacific, you can see the glitch of the satellite once again, and Nora just literally losing itself. Made landfall earlier than forecast and pretty much weakened as a result more significantly than originally anticipated. In the Western Pacific, there's not much going on here, as what we've been seeing for the last several weeks now, pretty much ever since we had that influx of storms in the beginning of the month. That is the complete opposite at this point. The basin is expected to remain devoid of tropical activity for quite some time. Moving on over to the North Indian Ocean satellite imagery here, you can see the monsoonal pattern continuing across portions of the Bay of Bengal. Otherwise, the Arabian Sea remains dry, and that's pretty much the same thing I've basically been saying all month about what's going on in the North Indian Ocean here, so not really a surprise that I'm not saying much different. Our main feature, of course, remains Ida, given the fact that it is still bringing a mess inland. More rainfall is expected as it continues to push north, and of course we're going to be looking at significant rainfall totals across the Ohio Valley and Mid-Atlantic, and even portions of course Tennessee and Kentucky, as that is something that those areas need to be watching. In the Eastern Pacific, the sea surface temperatures look like this: 28 to 29 degrees Celsius for the eastern part of the basin. However, there are some pockets where the sea surface temperatures are only around 27. The Gulf of Mexico is starting to feel the effects of what Ida did there, so the temperatures have gone down to 28 to 29 in the eastern Gulf of Mexico, but still very warm nonetheless. Other than that, it's still 28 to 29 for pretty much the entire Atlantic basin there. In the North Indian Ocean, the temperatures look like this: the Bay of Bengal remaining around 28 to 29 degrees Celsius, around 28 in the Arabian Sea to start off with, before those temperatures cool off around 24 as you head to the western part of the Arabian Sea there. The Western Pacific looks like this: 30 degrees Celsius temperatures near the equator, the Philippine Sea, and as you head into the South China Sea. Other than that, the main part of the basin remains around 29 degrees Celsius, with some isolated pockets around 28. Sea surface temperatures in the southern hemisphere remaining unfavorable, of course, as well. So with that, the sea surface temperature anomalies look like this. You're starting to see more signs of that La Nina beginning to show there. High latitudes, of course, are remaining relatively warm, and really the Eastern Pacific is being infiltrated by those slightly cooler than normal or barely above average temperatures. Everywhere else is still looking above average right now. On this day in 1990, we had Typhoon Abe, which was about to make landfall in China. It would be relatively significant, of course. We also had Hurricane Gustav, which was an out-to-sea Category 3. However, it would become a major again 18 years later with a completely different mind of its own, and Lowell was barely alive and pretty much about to die. This, of course, is sponsored by On This Day. Their Twitter can be found at the bottom of your screen. It's powered by the @CycloneHistory tag. Hopefully it didn't sound redundant there. With that, we're going to be moving on to the next names. At this point, we've now used half the names in the Atlantic. The next name is now Larry and Mindy. In the Eastern Pacific, the next two names are Olaf and Pamela. And in the Central Pacific, while Nike may be telling you to do it, we're literally just telling the Central Pacific to just form Hone. In the Western Pacific, the next two names here are Kansan followed by Chantu. And in the North Indian Ocean, we're looking out for Gulab and Shaheen. Moving on over to the Southern Hemisphere, that is, specifically the Southwestern Indian Ocean. The next two names here are Anna followed by Batsire. In the Australian region, we're looking out for Patty and Ruby. And in the South Pacific, it's Cody. We'll be back for another tropical weather bulletin to start off this month of September, at least, tomorrow night.